Right, so let's do this. Net zero. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is set to reject net zero demands of government advisers over their demands to halt the expansion of airports. Now, the government believes airport growth will be key to boosting the economy, and the move to reject the net zero advice comes amid growing anger within the Conservative backbenches that climate policies and net zero is a drag contributing to our cost of living crisis. So is Rishi right to reject net zero? Well, not all of it, though, let's be honest. Well, let's see what my panel makers out. Joining me, former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib, and also senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. I'm going to start with you then, Nigel.
No, he's wrong to reject it. I do understand that airport expansion is important for the economy. So is reaching the target of net zero by 2050. Now, the answer to this, then, is that the only way we can get there and have both is if you've got green aviation fuels, which simply won't then add extra carbon to the atmosphere. These are being developed. There's talk about the government investing in companies trying to produce this stuff. All those things should happen and do it hand in hand. So airport expansion only works when you make sure that you don't increase your carbon footprint at the same time. If you don't do these things, we're not going to reach net zero by 2050.
But what about, just on your point of this green aviation fuel, which would use a lot of fields and, you know, don't they use it from crops and things like that? The worry is people will grow this instead of food.
Well, I mean
that's robbing one thing to destroy another.
Well, yes. I mean, I'm not quite sure how that would work. But the point really is that if we're serious about it, if we're not serious about net zero, then everything we're doing it just doesn't matter. But if you believe it's important to hit the target, there are going to be various costs to doing that. It will be things like you'll find a wind farm outside your front door. No one's going to like it, but it's something
noisy.
Well, but it's something that will have to happen.
But they also kill animals as well.
We've had but if we keep saying, oh, we can't have this, it's a bit like you, Les, that we want to get to net zero, but we don't want to pay for it, and all the ways through that all of us are going to have to pay for it. The government, us as individuals, us as a country.
Well, Dubai and India and other places won't be bothering with that, but what do you think?
Well, I mean, Nigel will be very pleased to hear that there's not a hope in hell of Rishi Sunak ditching the drive to net zero. We're committed to net zero through domestic legislation. We're committed to net zero through the Paris Accord. We're committed to net zero through the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, which is an international treaty that we signed with the European Union.
God.
And there are very specific targets this government has to meet by certain dates in order to comply. Now, it can move around the edges of its target reductions in emissions, but it can't actually get off the conveyor belt to net zero by 2050, not without Parliament going into a complete meltdown and our ineffectual, weak government having to break international treaties, of which there is not a hope in hell.
But don't lots of other countries break international treaties?
Well, absolutely.
So why?
Because we have a weak, ineffectual government that is scared of the EU in as much measure as it wants to curry favour with the EU. There is no chance he's getting off this. As I speak, Nana, there is a new energy bill going through Parliament.
Yes, we know
which
about this.
will make it criminal, make all of us criminally liable.
That's my monologue, actually. Yeah.
Is it? If we do not comply with the terms of that bill, which include making our homes compatible with the targets set out by the government. By 2027, we've got to get homes up to an EPC, an Energy Performance Certificate rating of C, and by 2030, an Energy Performance Certificate rating of B. The cost of doing that, and the vast majority of buildings in this country do not comply with either of those targets, the cost of doing that is massive. And the cost and burden on the British people, while we've got a cost of living crisis, it's just ridiculous.
But Rishi Sunak is pausing this. You know, he's ignoring the CCC, which is a climate committee advice.
Which you may not be able to do because
but he's going to risk legal challenges.
It's a statutory body, and
set
so
up by Boris Johnson, wasn't it?
Yeah, and so he really does have to take advice from them, and if he turns it down, there could be a legal challenge.
So they're forcing him, basically. So it's not really.
So this is really interesting. This is the Climate Change Committee that was created pursuant to the Climate Change Act. And the committee is one of those so-called independent committees, which means it's entirely unaccountable, and it tells government what government needs to do. Government has abrogated its democratically appointed position to make decisions for the British people to an unelected body of people on a committee. The committee should be abolished. There's no place for this committee in the United Kingdom.
We can actually blame Boris Johnson for that.
No, I'm afraid it isn't.
Some of the things, so didn't he set up this whole sort of this Climate Change Act and things like that?
This is Gordon Brown and Tony Blair,
but the carbon budget was put into law by Boris Johnson.
But don't we come back to the real issue that we started with, which is if we want airport expansion, which we probably do, how do we get there and keep within our 2050 targets?
Well, that's the point, Nigel.
We scrapped the targets.
That's the point. What we've got is an economic reality coming into direct conflict with this economic emasculation that is net zero. And it's really interesting reading the government minister's comment on it. It says...
But I can't work out whether you're against it or for it.
Yes, so the Department of Transport spokesman for the government said, airport growth and the aviation sector as a whole has a key role to play in boosting our global connectivity. Yeah, absolutely right. We remain supportive of airport expansion as long as it can be delivered in a sustainable way. Well, that last phrase completely undermines any real commitment to expanding Heathrow. Now, for the vast majority of my life, Heathrow Airport was the most busy airport in the world.
Yes.
It allowed the United Kingdom to be front and centre on the global stage. It is now 8th in the world, behind a whole load of airports, including some in the Middle East and Far East. We need a third runway.
Well, let's find out what you think. I mean, are we going too far with this net zero? Is it time? I mean, if only we could get out of this, and why can't we? Seeing as the British public don't really want to go along with it, or the way it's going, what do you think? How can we navigate net zero? gbviews@gbnews.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Get in touch as well. You can also tweet us at GB News. If you just joined me, Ben Habib and Nigel Nelson are going head-to-head on this next story. It's migration. French President Emmanuel Macron is beginning to get a taste of his own medicine over migrants. Now, it's been revealed in the Express newspaper today that migrants from French-speaking countries like Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia are using British visitors' visas to sneak into France. Now, the route through Britain has been described as a complete scandal, with accusations that Britain is being used to facilitate smuggling. Remember when I said something like that? I think I literally got lynched. So once in France, it's been alleged that these migrants can then jump into the back of lorries and make their way across Europe. Now, the news comes as GB News revealed today, 21,000 people have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year. So, Ben, Nigel, what do you make of that?
Well, I would love to see an exodus of people from the United Kingdom heading across the Channel to France to give them a genuine taste of their own medicine. But I'm afraid this doesn't even begin to compare to the problem we're facing, illegal migrants coming from France. First of all, it's only 22 people. Second of all,
That's a start.
It's a start. It's a good start. It's a good start. It's a good start.
That's how the boat started.
But
Exactly, that's what we thought. It's only 22 people.
The other salient point to note here is that these people entered the United Kingdom legally. We know who they are. They have passports. We know their background. They've gone through our visa check system, so they're basically law-abiding, sensible human beings. We do not have anything like that clarity on the people coming from France to the United Kingdom. They've chucked all their papers away. They've arrived in France illegally, crossing into the Western Balkans, Greece and Italy from Northern Africa and the Middle East. Completely different problem.
Well, it could become a thing, but I noticed that we've managed to process 2,000 applications a week now, the Home Office, which begs the question as to why they couldn't do that sooner. But, Nigel, what's your view on all
Well,
this?
on this particular one, this is, without a doubt, this is a French problem. In exactly the same way that migrants who travel through France to get to Calais to come to this country are a British problem, which is why the French behave the way they do. So it would be quite amusing if the French now decided that these people ought to come back to Britain on the basis that we're a safe country.
Well, I'd be very happy to take them back if France would pay us £500 million as we've paid them to control their borders.
Well, at the moment with 22, we wouldn't actually need that, but 40,000 visas have been issued to Algerians, Moroccans, Tunisians, from French French-speaking countries who find it difficult to get into France, it could become a bigger problem. But I mean, obviously, we've found ways of controlling people coming over the channel by lorry, and as a result, that's why they're coming over by boat.
Well, that's because we do the job that France should be doing, which is getting all the details, processing them properly, and then when they do go back, we know who they are.
Well, I mean, as Ben said, these people are coming here legally in the sense that they're getting legitimate visitors' visas to come to this
France
country.
could do some sort of processing with people who are coming on to their country. So all the people in these camps and stuff, they could be doing something there, and they just seem to allow them to language and allow them to leave.
Well, and if they ask for asylum in France, they will be processed in France. If they're just travelling through to Calais, they're on their way to Britain, and hence why we have the problem. But essentially, that makes it more of a British problem than it does a French one.
It's always our problem, isn't it? It's
always our problem.
No matter which way round it is, it
Nigel,
always comes back to us, doesn't it?
It is actually a French problem. They have signed a bilateral agreement with the United Kingdom to control what goes on their beaches. We've paid them... we have committed to pay and have paid nearly £700 million for the benefit of that agreement. They should enforce that agreement.
Well, and more boats are being thwarted from actually putting to sea than they were before.
No, they're not.
Well, they are.
You don't have any evidence.
No, that's just a declared statistic from the French.
Well, actually, it's a declared statistic from the British government. They're saying that 40% of launches have been foiled. It doesn't mean that we agree with the way the French are letting the boats come towards our waters once they've put out to sea.
Well, it's a bit disgraceful. I think they're not really doing it. They want them to go. They're letting them go.
They want our money.
They want them to go. They're letting them go, and that's what's happening. Well, listen, if you've got a thought, we'd love to hear it. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio.